It is 6 o'clock on Monday, February 22nd, 2021. I'd like to call the Planning Commission meeting to order. Before we call the roll, I'm supposed to announce 4 things. Please leave your microphones on mute unless you're speaking. That way we can avoid feedback. If you're speaking and I haven't said your name, please say your name for anybody who's listening by telephone or doesn't know who you are. Please don't interrupt each other. And while we greatly appreciate public input, we do have a system because it's more difficult with virtual meetings to kind of control the crowd, control people speaking and do it in an orderly way. So we ask people to sign up in advance. Applicants are not covered by that. They are effectively signed up by being applicants. So that being said, please call the roll.
Okay. Commissioner Hawley?
Here.
Commissioner Bach?
Here.
Commissioner Gentes?
Here.
Commissioner Chorin? I see you. Commissioner Jim Schaefer?
Here.
Commissioner Lemke?
Here.
Commissioner John Stoker?
Here.
Commissioner Becky Schaefer?
Here.
Alderman Nervin?
Here.
Mayor Worth?
Here. Marty, it appears that your face is on the is on the screen. You neither have a red nor a green a little microphone next to your name, which would indicate to me that there's something wrong there, just so you know. And it also now looks like you froze. Does it look like he froze to everybody else?
Yeah.
Either that or something tragic has happened to him. So hopefully he'll get that fixed and join us. The first item of business is approval of the minutes from January 25, 2021. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Is there a second? We have a motion and a second. Any corrections, comments, discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 This evening, we have 4 items on our consent agenda. I'll read them, and if anybody wants to remove any of them from the consent agenda, they may. Other than that, we'll vote on them together. The first, the applicant is seeking certified survey map approval to allow a 2-lot land division at 3300 West Grace Avenue. The second item, the applicant is seeking accessory structure approval for an 8,500 square foot private horse barn riding arena at 131161 West Freistadt Road. The third one, the applicant is seeking setback waiver approval to allow for a 672 square foot addition to the west of the existing dwelling at 13101 North Wauwatosa Road. That's here because that is in the setback. And the fourth item is for the woods at Highland Park, where they're seeking subdivision sign and sign waiver approval to allow for a sign to be located partially in the right of way. This development's at the corner of Green Bay Road and Woods Court. Did anybody want to remove any of those items from the consent agenda? If not, is there a motion to approve the items on the consent agenda?
I move to approve the items on the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
John Stoker seconds.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Well, that was easy. The next item, this is the Foxtown Brewery. They're seeking sign waiver approval to allow for, I think we approved the patio expansion last time. So it's simply to allow a sign at the property at 6411 West Mequon Road. Is there a motion to remove this from the table?
Moved.
I heard a motion and a second. I don't think that's debatable. All in favor of removing it from the table, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? So now that's removed from the table. Buffalo, are you going to talk to us about this, or Jack, or who's?
Yeah, I'll be taking this one, Mayor. So I also going to share my screen with you all as well. So after our last meeting, we tabled this. There was discussion on what should go on the sign or on the wall in front of the patio area. We had discussions regarding whether that should be identifying the area somehow as the town center. There was a concern about having basically an unofficial name of Foxtown for this area. So the planning commission tabled it at our last meeting. After the meeting, I spoke with the representatives of Foxtown. They came back with this what you see on the screen right here. This was their first alternative, which showed the MTC logo on one of the pillars, as well as the Foxtown name. I asked them if they'd be interested in having the logo on each side of the sign, and so they came back with basically this version here. I guess staff felt that while we like the format of the sign, we felt that the logos should be larger than the actual font of the Foxtown. And in order to make it a on-premise sign, we also felt that the word brewery should go on that sign somewhere on the bottom, in a smaller font. After speaking with the applicant, they were not supportive of the suggestions we were making, so I believe they would like to get this approved as is, or I think they'll maybe defer not to have a sign on this wall. So our recommendation is to approve the waiver based on the sign that you see in front of us with a couple minor changes, having that logo to be larger than the Foxtown font, and then adding the word brewery underneath it. And that would be our recommendation for approval.
Thank you. The applicant, is there anything you want to add? I think your position's pretty clear, but certainly you're welcome to make any comments if you think it's necessary. If not, is there anybody have any questions for Jack or staff, or is there a motion to be had? Mr. Stoker.
I'm just with the one that Jack is sharing on the screen now with the logo, the MT logo on both sides. Jack, we don't have a rendering of those being larger. That's something they're not interested in. Is that what you said?
Correct.
Okay. Because I would agree. I think it would look a little better if they were marginally larger, because they kind of are lost given the size of the Foxtown. If we were to go this route, I think I would like to see the MTs slightly larger as well. I don't know that they have to be bigger than the fonts, but just a little more substantial, in my opinion, because right now I feel like they're kind of lost.
This is Steve Smith, the Steve Smith Architects. I've not had a chance to talk with Tom Neiman. Greg Thompson is on the call. And I, just in hearing your comment, Alderman Stoker, I don't think having the logo slightly larger is a bad suggestion. My understanding is Tom Neiman's objection to it is all of a sudden having those be larger than Foxtown, to where Foxtown becomes basically more minuscule in nature. And so I think maybe there's a way to work those things together, to work with staff to maybe reach a consensus. But I think having them be smaller than the Mequon Thiensville logo itself was where Tom Neiman's concerns were. So maybe again, if we can work with staff to reach a consensus that we can both be satisfied, I think that would be my recommendation to proceed forward with it.
In my follow-up question, since I didn't know you were here, you're objecting to the brewery being added, and I'm guessing that's because you're concerned how much it's going to shrink the Foxtown, the size down to get the word brewery underneath there. Is that the position you guys are taking?
I would say, actually, I believe my understanding, first of all, our intention was really have this be a project identification sign. We were proposing a similar sign at the east end adjacent to what is Building D. That was what we were originally proposing to do. Having the brewery sign, taking it off the building and putting it here I guess the question is, would we have to add the brewery? Our preference would be not to. Our preference would be to leave Foxtown. If we have to increase the fonts of size of the Mequon Thiensville logo on either side of that, we could work that and maybe slightly reduce the Foxtown copy size. But having that be smaller than the Mequon, we felt like that would look odd, actually. So I believe if we could work with it as it's shown, but increase as at your suggestion of increasing the two flanking logos to be more commensurate with the size of the copy of Foxtown, I think that's something, that would be our preference, to not have to add brewery beneath it. Greg Thompson is on this call. I'm not sure, Greg, if you wish to add anything to that or not.
Yeah, Steve, that's exactly what I think Tom and I discussed earlier today. If the font size and the logos can be approximately the same size, that would be acceptable, and just have the word Foxtown there. It's kind of meant to identify the Foxtown overall development. So yeah, that what you said is correct.
I'm gonna comment. I frankly like the sign as it's being shown right now.
Anyone catch what Greg was saying?
Excuse me?
I think he was just asking if we heard him.
Yeah, we
So
heard you.
again, I guess if we were to increase the size of the flanking logos for Mequon Thiensville, and work that with staff, our preference would be not to add brewery and just have Foxtown.
Yes, we heard that.
Would basically increase the font size of the Mequon Thiensville logo to match that of the Foxtown copy.
Okay, I was about to make my comment. I kind of like the sign as it's being
And we
shown.
may have to reduce Foxtown slightly so that it's not crowded. We would not want to have it feel crowded, so we
Sir?
would work both of those together.
Sir, please don't interrupt me again. I'm not quite sure what's happening.
Hello, this is Ben Mather from Stephen Perry Smith as well. Steve is in North Carolina,
Okay.
and he has intermittent connection because he's in the mountains. So he's not meaning to interrupt you. He probably just didn't hear that you were speaking. I'm sorry about that.
Right. No, that's okay. I just didn't know what was going on. We kind of said, did anybody want to talk? Nobody spoke. Then we turned it to the commission, and now people are jumping in. My comment was going to be, I like the sign as it exists. I think if you make it a little bigger on the ends, fine. I think it would actually look funny.
I've lost the sound for some reason, so I'm not hearing anyone speaking.
So.
Perhaps
well,
we just mute that.
yes, please do. So I think that it, you know, if it's exactly the same size as the font of the sign, it's going to look like it's kind of blended together as one word. Having it slightly smaller actually makes the sign stand out. Those logos stand out, I think, a little bit more than if it was all the same and it'd be just like, well, what's that weird letter? Also, for years, staff's position had always been to have fewer words on signs. So I'm a little surprised now we're suggesting to add an additional word. You know, we didn't make M&I put the word bank underneath M&I. Now, I understand why you want to do it, because the concept is this is supposed to be the sign for this building and not a monument sign for the development. And I understand they want it to be a monument sign for the development. But I don't see that having it without the word brewery. Frankly, I think people are going to think of this as the Foxtown Brewery sign, whether it says brewery or not. You know, so I think the picture that's in front of us looks pretty good. Now, it may be that it looks small because this picture is small, but that's going to be a pretty big wall. Those logos will be pretty noticeable. At least that's my view, but I'll go along with what the commission wants on this. Did anybody else have any comments? Mr. Schaefer?
Yes, I also like it as it is. I guess I would accept making it a little larger, but not too much larger. All of the letters are a little different. The T and the O are smaller. If it was May about that size, I could accept that, but never as large as the F or the last letter, the N.
I agree.
So, go ahead.
I thought you were done. I wasn't cutting you off. Are you done?
Yeah, I
Didn't want
think
to-
so.
I think I saw Mr. Chorn's hand up.
Yes, I mean, in looking at the picture, the logo for Mequon Thiensville, I can't figure out what it is, and so I'm thinking that perhaps that should be a little bit larger. And then going back to, I think, comments before, that if the Foxtown and the Mequon Thiensville logo were closer in scale, I think it would be better. But you've already got, with regards to adding the name brewery at the bottom, it's up on the side of the building already, so I think it's kind of redundant. I think my suggestion is modify the logo for Mequon Thiensville to be closer to the font size as Foxtown, and forget about the name needing to have the brewery underneath Foxtown.
Thank you. Anybody else? I'll make a motion then. I'd move approval of the sign, that the applicant and the staff can come to some sort of an agreement on, if necessary, on a slightly larger logo, but not to be larger than the T or the O in the middle of Foxtown. And the word, without the word brewery.
Did you say not to be larger than the T and the O?
Yeah, not to be larger than the T and the O.
I second that.
So that it's offsetting and has a slightly different size than the letters on the end of the word, so that it's quite clear it's not part of the word. There was a set motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The ayes have it, and we'll go on to the next item. This is also for Foxtown. The applicant seeking master sign plan approval for properties at 11090 and 11120 Northwestern Drive.
So yes, this is for the E1 and E2 buildings. So there's a lot of, I tried to make this as graphically as clear as possible, because there's a lot of stuff in this packet. So first I'll share with you, this is a site plan, just so you give a better context of the area. So we have the E1 building, this is furthest to the north, and then we have the E2 building to the south. This is Western Drive on the top, or Weston Drive on the top. So the applicant is looking for a master sign plan for both the buildings. There's also an E3 building that will be located further south. That hasn't been designed or approved at this time, and they'll have to come back once they're further along in that process. The E1 building currently has commercial tenants slated for the first floor, and the Fromm Family Foods office is on the second and third floor. The E2 building has commercial tenants on the first floor, and offices on the second floor, and then the extended stay suites on the third floor. So we went back and forth. I worked with the applicant. You see a bunch of different graphics in the packet. Exhibit A, B, and C, they're labeled. Exhibit A was what was originally submitted by the applicant in terms of their sign plan. Based on the floor plans and our discussions at staff, we actually submitted back Exhibit B to them and asked them if they would be interested in looking at some of our options that we laid out. And then they came back with Exhibit C, basically, which is pretty much, we're all fairly in agreement with everything except a couple different details, and I'll go through those. So basically, on the E1 and the E1 building, we'll start with the east and west elevation. We are in agreement on in terms of the signage. Where we differ on is the north and south elevation. What they're proposing on the north elevation, as you can see on the screen, is the Foxtown Market to the west, and then one of the tenant panel signs for the meats tenant space that's adjacent to this window. And on the south facade, they're also showing the Foxtown Market and then a sign for one of the other tenants within the building. Our staff suggestion is that on these end caps, there should only be a sign at the front of the building along Weston and not to the back. This is similar to what we approved for Town Center 1 on Cedarburg and Mequon Road. And primarily it's to keep down the amount of signage, and also that the signs to the interior, so this building here, E1 south elevation, if you look at the floor plan or the site plan again, these building signs would go basically in this area back here. From the road, you won't even see any of those signs. It's just too narrow of a passageway through there. So those signs really won't serve a purpose unless you're actually driving through and getting back to that area. The same situation exists for the E2 buildings. We're okay with the front and the back in terms of the tenant signage, but on the north and south elevation, again, we are asking that only those be located in the front, and those identify the actual tenants that are adjacent to that space. They're adding a tenant panel sign on both elevations in the back for the extended stay suites, and that's not the location of the extended stay suites or the entranceway. That's located in when you enter that from the west or east elevation, as shown right about here. So our basic difference is just those additional signs on the east end of the end caps of those buildings. With everything else they submitted, we're supportive of. We think it does a nice job of balancing the architecture of the building. All the signage is within the 30 square foot requirement of our code. So overall, we're supportive with those minor changes. Thank you.
Does the applicant have anything they'd like to add? Now's your chance.
I guess our feeling, Mayor, was that the additional signage on the east side of the end caps, one, we felt visually helped balance it. And just we felt it looked actually a little bit odd, because in this case, this building really has, you could actually argue has 4 fronts, but it has 3 fronts. The north side of the building is facing Mequon Road, so it has visibility. Just having the Foxtown Market, we felt looked a little bit understated from the visibility to Mequon Road, and we felt it actually helped the aesthetics of the building, as well as letting people know what's actually happening within the building, to have the sign at the north end of building E1 visible on that east end cap. Similarly, on the other ends, we're basically doing it to essentially balance the signage. We currently have the gooseneck lighting there, and taking out the signage, you have lights that look like the space is empty. So we felt architecturally and aesthetically, it was enhancing the project by having those signs. They're small signs. We don't think it's compromising anything. It's all internal to the project. But certainly on the north end of E1, we felt the visibility of letting people know there actually is one a butcher, but just seeing some of the signage there, we thought was important to our submission.
Thank you. Questions from the commission? Mr. Chorin.
The question for Jack, when he was talking about the redundant, or what he thought was redundant signs, they were between the 2 buildings. I guess I would tend to agree with the applicant on the north face of the north building, that 2 signs make some sense because of the exposure to Mequon Road. So, but with regards to the signs at the roadway between the 2 buildings, I think the one that is placed closest to Weston makes sense, and the one towards the east does not.
And I would just add that right now, it's a little bit better visibility to Mequon Road, but there is a vacant parcel in that corner that hopefully someday will develop. So that'll eliminate or reduce the visibility of those signs from Mequon Road. And at that distance, I'm not sure if you're going to be able to read that driving down Mequon Road as well.
Point taken.
A question for you. I've got two questions, Jack. Here's where my lack of architectural acumen probably comes into play. Will it look odd having the gooseneck lights without a sign underneath them? And again, perhaps
I don't know. They have other areas on the building. If you look at the E1 West elevation, there's goosenecks that are not going to be, they're not going to have signage there either. So I don't find that to be unusual. I think it may look a little odd, but I think that was the choice. Maybe the lighting and the signage should have come together at the same time, but I understand the difficulties of doing that. But I think it'll look fine because they're using those lights as architectural features throughout the two buildings that don't have signage underneath every single one of them.
Okay, and the second question is the signs that would be removed from the ends that would identify tenants. Those tenants all would have an east and west sign already, correct?
Correct, and they wouldn't necessarily have to remove the tenant panel sign. So on the E1 North elevation here, the sign for the Foxtown Meats could take the place of this Foxtown Market, and they could eliminate the Foxtown Market. So then that Foxtown Meats would still have 3 signs total, or they could eliminate this sign for the Foxtown Meats, but they would still have 2 signs on the front and the back.
I'm basically concerned about consistency with what we've approved elsewhere. These aren't entranceways. We tend to, in the past, we didn't allow side signs at all. Now we've allowed one. I think if we start allowing, 2, I don't really mind the signs, and I don't even mind the 2, but it's not what we've told other people, I guess, is my concern.
Well, the other thing I would say too is that if there were different tenants in the front and back, those are different tenants, and maybe there'd be a reason to have 2 different signs there, but that's all one tenant space throughout the whole length.
My second question. That there's no lack of signage for those end tenants.
Right.
But I don't feel strongly about this. Mr. Stoker.
My only question, when we've done this in the past, were we exceeding the allowed square footage for signs, and we were trying to remove signs because they were exceeding square footage? My own personal opinion is I think it looks more balanced. I understand there's going to be a building in front of this, but that could be a year, or it could be 5 years down the road. My own personal opinion is architecturally, I like it better having both signs, but I don't have a strong opinion one way or the other. I just feel like, if I'm recollecting correctly, that where we had other situation, we may have had other issues, not just the redundancy. I thought for some reason there was a total square footage we were exceeding or something. Maybe Jack can allude to that.
No, not for multi-tenant signs. In the past, we've only allowed 1 per tenant. And then, with the town center, we recognize the 4-sided architecture and the desire to have entranceways on both ends. So it's been somewhat of a de facto allowance to have 2 signs in the town center, that one for the front, one for the back. And then we allowed for, like I said, MTC1, we allowed some of those end caps to have a 3rd sign because it's visible through the entranceway. And we've also allowed that on Port Washington Road in some limited circumstances where you were on an end cap, that you were allowed that additional sign. Some of you may recall, though, we did originally deny a sign on the Riverside building for a tenant for the restaurant who wanted to go on the end cap when they didn't have a tenant space that it was adjacent to that end cap. And that's kind of what we're trying to avoid here too with those those two interior signs for the extended stay suites, because they're not on the first floor even, and they don't have an access point anywhere near where those signs are going. So there's a concern for precedence as well as just in terms of the number of signs that we've allowed.
Hello, this is Ben Mather again from Stephen Perry Smith. I just wanted to make one clarifying.
Mr. Mather,
Yes,
would you like to be called on to speak?
yes, please.
Okay, go ahead.
Sorry about that. I missed the beginning. So this sign on the north end of building E1 that's in question, the tenant sign. So there have been talks with our client about the content of that sign. And, rather than saying the name of the tenant, it might just say butcher or meats or something like that. So it would be not unlike what is on the St. Paul Fish Company building across the street, where on their east elevation, they have, a number of names of different fish. So, and it alludes back to the owner's original concept of the entire development of, being an area where you could have access to everything that you would need in any day. So a butcher, a bakery, restaurant, all the things that, it's a kind of a self-sustaining neighborhood. So that was one of the ideas of what we would put on that sign, not actually the name of the tenant.
Okay, anybody else on the commission have comments? Mr. Bach, you had your hand up, didn't you?
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to ask Jack if based on those last comments, though, I don't know if this pertains to my question, if there's any benefit to having the name of the place for deliveries, packages, those kinds of things on both sides. But if some sign is just going to say meats or bakery, I don't think that's really needed.
I have one other question. In the middle between the two proposed signs, there's a darker area. It does not appear that there are the gooseneck lights there. Is that correct?
I believe that's correct.
Oh, because if you were to put
That
one
is
sign,
correct, Mayor.
it would make more sense to put that sign there. But there's no lighting for that sign. Is there a motion from somebody on the commission? Mr. Stoker.
I will actually make a motion to approve per staff's recommendations.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Okay. Commissioner Gentes,
Aye.
Commissioner Chorin,
Oh,
no? I'm sorry. Commissioner
Aye.
Chorin, can you please repeat?
Aye.
Thank you.
yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Commissioner Jim Shaper,
Aye.
Commissioner Lemke,
Aye.
Commissioner Stoker.
Aye.
Commissioner Becky Schaefer,
Aye.
Alderman Nervin,
Aye.
Mayor Worth.
Aye. The ayes have it. Again, it's a beautiful project. Can't wait to see more things open. Looking forward to buying meat. That is, our next meeting is Monday, March 22nd at 6 o'clock. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
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 The ayes have it. Have a good evening, everyone. Thank you.
Good.